Hey everyone, I am coming back at you with another creative video, and today I thought it would be fun to share with you a little peek into how I incorporate scribbling into my art journal surfaces. For me, I don't know if it's just me, but I absolutely adore scribbling. From being a little kid, that being probably one of the first ways many of us were introduced to art, where you don't know what you're doing, but you're just scribbling, really getting expressive, really having fun with the way it feels to move something along a surface. And then I don't know what happens. I think for some reason, as we grow and develop, we move away from that whole scribbling process. But I'm not one of those people. I have been scribbling since I was a little kid, and I proudly own it because these days, as an adult, it is one of my favorite ways to get expressive on my surfaces, whether it's in an art journal where I experiment and play, if it's on a painting, if it's on paper. Scribbling is one of my favorite ways to really tap into expression. It's also one of my favorite ways to play with color. It's another favorite of mine to actually utilize pens that are dried up, because I can just use that ink up in a really interesting way. Oftentimes dried up pens, when you scribble with them, it just really captures the energy and movement of your hands. And one of my favorite ways to use scribbling is actually as a colorful background for a lot of my drawings and doodles and explorations in my art journal. So I thought today I would just share with you what it looks like for me to mess around on those pages with scribbling, and then how I layer over the top of them with a few different techniques, different process materials and supplies. So for this video, I'm going to be using that composition notebook again. I talked about how I like to prep my pages in a cheap old composition notebook with acrylic paint, but for this video, I'm going to be drawing and scribbling right over the top of that lined paper where I've done nothing to prep those pages. And then I'm going to be using one of my favorite cheap, affordable supplies to scribble with, and that's just Crayola markers. I adore Crayola markers as well. They are a really cheap, fun option if you're working on a budget. They are not just for kids. This is not sponsored. Nobody's paying me to say this, but I love that you can run to the grocery store, run to the drugstore, pick up a pack of Crayola markers and really get creative with them even as an adult. So I'm going to be using my composition notebook, my Crayola markers, and then going back into these pages with a variety of different tools and supplies. So again, I am just using a composition journal. Now, I spend a lot of time prepping pages in these journals. I will cover them with acrylic paint so I can draw over the top. But for this little video, I am just drawing and scribbling right over the top of that lined notebook paper. And those of you that will ask me, do the lines bother you? Why don't you use blank paper? I don't know. I have a million different art journals and sketchbooks, and this is just one of many. I do not mind the lines on those pages. In fact, it's something I actually embrace. It's just a fun way, especially as a teacher, especially as somebody who's constantly demonstrating different techniques. I love being able to show you all that you don't have to be precious with those supplies, and even notebook paper, you can draw and mess around on it, and that is why I am using this journal for that purpose. So you're just going to watch me scribble through a bunch of different pages. Again, I'm mostly using those Crayola markers, but just about any type of marker or even pens are going to work. For me, I like creating these colorful backgrounds. So I am picking things that are really vibrant in color. I'm also picking colors that I can work over the top of and still hold on to some contrast. So you'll notice my colors are fairly light. They are colors that, I can then use a black pen over the top of, as you will see, and I'm not going to lose my designs. Another tip, again, is utilizing dried out markers. So I don't toss my markers when they start to dry out. I actually use them till the very end. I like to scribble with them because, again, as I mentioned in my intro, I am able to, with a dried up marker, really capture movement in my hand in an interesting way when I'm scribbling. So while I love those really pigmented markers, I will also utilize things that are about ready to dry up and, get ready to be tossed out. And when I work this way, I love to kind of scribble over a handful of different pages. I'll do anywhere from 3 to 5 spreads at a time. So then I can go back over weeks and draw over these pages. If you follow my videos, if you take my classes, follow me on social media, you will know that I can't stand creating on a blank piece piece of paper. I like breaking the ice and then carrying my journal around with me with these colorful pages that I can then go over the top of. And for me, scribbling is such a fun way to get expressive, to get my feelings out, to get maybe like a memory and emotion out, or just to like have fun and go wild. I often blast my music and scribble. Just a really pleasing process for me. And then I've got all these really great, interesting, childlike backgrounds that I can then utilize to draw, collage, layer over the top of, which I'm just going to show you all a couple of different ways that I like to do it. All right, so when it comes to my art journal or my sketchbooks, I use these places to experiment and play around with ideas. I am not using them to create a masterpiece or to turn it into something you'd hang on the wall. So if you flip through my art journal pages, there's a lot of pretty simple illustrative types of drawings. There's a lot of pattern. I love drawing pattern and playing around with repetition on a surface. I utilize a lot of floral inspiration in my art and my art journal. So I do a lot of what people would probably consider doodling, though I consider it drawing, and really just mess around on those pages. And I really love just grabbing a Sharpie. I'm using one of like the king size Sharpies just to mess around with creating like a floral repeat design on my page. But you'll notice as I draw over the top of those scribbles, it starts to just look really interesting. You've got some color happening, but you've got a lot of expression within that color. And as I begin to cover up some of those scribbles with my drawings, it looks like, you know, you've got this beautiful, interesting thing happening with those florals and the color behind them. And it just takes on a new life of its own. So those scribbles for me are something that are just like layer number one in many of my pages, that I can like have this really expressive, interesting, energetic background that I then draw and mess around with over the top. And for me, I love to come up with ways to fill that space in interesting ways. So oftentimes I will color in space or, you know, play around with the space in between things on my surface, which actually adds a completely different look and feel to some of my simple drawings, some of that simple pattern that I like to play around with. And pages like this are one of my favorite ways, like sit down, watch a movie, draw at the same time, listen to a podcast, just really relax and experiment in my art journal. Same approach, but I'm just going to do a handful of mandalas on the surface. Again, I really, really love utilizing these scribbled, colorful backgrounds to draw over the top of. So again, I love white pages. There's nothing wrong with them, but there's something in my brain, especially when I'm just practicing and messing around and getting creative and experimenting, and my brain also really loves opening a page and there already being color on that page where I can just play around over the top of it. So for me, it's kind of about breaking the ice. My art journal, again, is a place that I experiment. I'm hashing out ideas, or I'm just like relaxing. You know, for me, it's really, really relaxing just to draw pattern, draw interesting things, and layer different elements. And so I love being able to open up my art journal and have a bunch of different colorful pages that are just waiting for me to draw or work over the top of. And this is another way that I really enjoy working, and that is layering different pens. So drew out those mandalas with my big fat Sharpie, and then I love going back over the top of those dark lines with one of my favorite white pens. It's that white Uniball Signo. And this is actually a really nice way for me personally to unwind at the end of the day, or just kind of mindlessly mess around on a page. So while I am a working artist with a business and I make art for a living, I spend a lot of time making art just for the pure fact that it eases and soothes my mind at the end of the day. Or, you know, if I'm stressed or if I have a lot going on, I will just grab my journal and just work through a couple ideas with no purpose other than just kind of turning my brain off and getting lost in the moment. So another page, third little example, I just want to show you how I work over those scribbles, is again drawing over the top of things. I'm doing my little signature floral pattern that I tend to do a lot of, but we're going to add acrylic paint and just start kind of layering a little bit over the top of those scribbles. Again, that color, that messy scribbly color, is about breaking the ice for me. It's about having a moment to scribble and get expressive and play around on a surface, but oftentimes I will cover up a large portion version of some of these pages. Not because I don't like them, not because, you know, I'm unhappy with the way they look, but I just really love working in layers. It's kind of my signature technique and process, and I'm always looking for ways to really play around with layers and different techniques and different materials within those layers. So oftentimes I will go back over a page, I will paint things out, but hold on to some of that color in other areas and other space. And I'm really utilizing that colorful scribble background as the color for my flowers. You'll notice I'm even covering up some of that color with my white pen, but the cool thing about using a white paint pen over the top of markers is you almost get a little bit of that color showing through. So I'm still going to have just a really, really light little scribble color show through any of those places that I've covered up with some of that white pen. And then something else I really enjoy doing in my art journal is free writing. It's getting thoughts, words, lyrics, quotes, stuff out on those pages, and I love finding ways to combine free writing with, you know, my art, with my ideas, my visual ideas. So I'm just using up a bunch of that space to journal, free write, and really create an interesting spread that just started simply out as really messy, expressive scribbles. So I know this is quick, this is a shorter video than some of my others, but it was really important for me to show you all how easy it is to incorporate that scribbling process into your work, specifically those art journal pages, often those places that we are experimenting and playing around with stuff. And so I just want you to see that someone like myself who dabbles in all kinds of techniques and supplies and art, I always use that childlike approach when it comes to scribbling as a way to build these interesting backgrounds that I can layer things over the top of. All right, so I hope you all enjoyed that. I hope this video inspires you to tap into some childlike expression, grab some cheap markers and pens, get scribbling, and utilize those scribbles as the first of many layers. You can have a lot of fun with getting childlike, expressive, and messy, get those feelings out, and then you can use those colorful surfaces as a place to layer and work over the top of. So I hope I brought you a little bit of inspiration today. I've got more fun videos coming at you, but in the meantime, get creative, start playing around with art, and just have fun on those surfaces.